why renting still is bad for you in 2022 market.
But first, let's hit it. Hi, this is Alan Victoria. Welcome to our channel.
And if this is your first time in our channel, you wanted to know everything about Greenville, Winterville, Pitt County, all the way to Raleigh, please subscribe in our channel and also get notified when we put a new video for you.
Honestly, we get calls, texts, and emails all the time from people just like you, looking to upsize, downsize, relocate, shift, my favorite word, buy their first home. We love helping bring their second home.
And this is our basically number.
Yeah, so call me or call my husband. We love talking to you and we love helping you. So now let's hit the channel of why rent is not necessarily good for you in this market.
Therefore, let's start with basically a statistic from the Redfin, which is a national real estate broker company. And basically what we wanted to talk about
is statistics.
A statistic. In June 2020, this national average for renting in the whole US was $1,600. And in June 2021, it reached to $1,767. And in June 2022, that we just passed, because we are in July, it got to 2016. Therefore, if you look at this trend, it's 26% increase. And we know in some states it was crazy, like Florida, it got over 40%.
Which is, again, crazy.
It's crazy.
Right. And then, honestly, the biggest thing about rent is you have no control over how much you're paying at the end of the day, right? So you're paying all of this money to somebody else's mortgage, but you have no control over how much that price is going to be next year, next month, whenever your lease ends, is now another question. Plus, let's just hypothetically say you're in that $2,000 apartment and you pay $2,000 a year. That's $24,000 you have paid
over a course of a year.
Over a course of a year that is not going towards a house payment, it's going into somebody else's pocket.
Basically,
not
you're paying somebody else's mortgage.
Right.
To be honest.
And they're still making money off it. So that is why rent is not necessarily good for you, the renter. So, and then again, you have no control. Maybe you've lived in a place for 30 years and then suddenly the person you rented from dies and the new people who own the house want you gone. So you're in your twilight years and now you're renting something you can't afford and you're going to get kicked out, and that's never a pretty thing either. So
therefore, average rent actually in January 2022 was increased 15.2% respect last year in January 2021. And also in June 2022, the national median rise 14.1% from the earlier, which is in 2021. And from months of May to June, we have 0.7%, almost 1% even increase in that.
So my husband told me this old saying that I had never heard, where a week's wages should pay off your month's rent, which I mean, I've never heard that before. And I used to be a renter, and it used to, at that point, was a month. I mean, we're already looking at half your paycheck for the entire month paying your rent, and it can be more because of the data that's just happening now. What was the statistic point you wanted to throw in
Therefore,
there?
the data showed actually in no state in the United States, entire US, where a worker with the normal wage, minimum wage, with the 40 hours a week working, that really they can afford a modest 2-bedroom rentals. So, as a working standard.
This inflation is just killing people in the rental market. And that is why we always say get into a home and get a fixed rate if you can. I know there's all these other options that are happening now, refi later, but fixed rate means that you are stable and nothing is going to happen to your mortgage no matter what. So either way, we know living expenses are on the rise. What else?
Yeah, living like a food, gas, utility, everything went up. And as a result, the amount that you put for your housing also decreased because you're going to cover all those things. And also more than 39 million Americans right now, they live in an apartment. And what's scary is here in Greenville, which is really not that far, 52% of people here are owners, which means 48% of people are renting, and they are not, it's not a stable place to be. Yes, some are college students, of course, but we have also a lot of people who just are in things that are not sustainable, just payments that are just not sustainable and not helping you in the future. So what can be done? Therefore, the question, as my wife said, what can be done and what is precisely is involved that rents is increasing and you as a buyers are avoiding to purchase a home.
Right, so it's absolutely hard. Nobody has a crystal ball, as I've said many times.
Exactly.
People like to predict lots of things, but at the end of the day, only you create your own destiny. You create your own future. And I know that people like to say, oh, the cards and everything else, or all the predictions and maybe something in the future. But at the end of the day, you control your life. Nobody else. You are in charge of what your choices are. And we're going to just talk about why your choices should really be thinking, even in this crazy market, becoming a home buyer. Why? What is going on?
Therefore, basically, we're going to list some of the factors that is important to this crisis. And the first thing that we want to hit the list is basically is high demand.
Yes.
Therefore, the crazy thing is because
a lot of people know what we're talking about, right? That's why the
three
demand is there.
categories, the three categories they were contributing to these high demands. There were seniors, boomers looking to downsize, and they joined a lot of renters. The second was the millennial that
they're now graduating into buying homes.
And the second one is recent generation Z that they are college graduate. And these people...
And yes, we skipped Gen X, which is what we are.
Yes. And then all these things, all these categories really as a result of that high demand. And we reached the record high in the last 20 years, which is 97.6% occupancy rate.
Right. So now there are not even rentals out there. So the rental market is even crazier than every other market
because
out
of
there.
This occupancy rent, basically, that has the highest.
And again, when you have a mortgage, you have a steady price that's never changing over the course, over the fixed income, at least for fixed rate. So nothing's ever changing. Whereas if you do these other things, you're paying someone else's mortgage that's not raising, and that means that the more they charge you, the more they're going to make in profit.
And then three other factors that really contribute to this demand was during the COVID, everything is slowed down, and now back to the normal. New households start to form, and also. What else?
Graduates are emerging, and still we always have college graduates, and they need to find places to live now that COVID is kind of not the big main factor that we're talking about anymore.
And the third one was the household that they condensed during the COVID and is starting to disperse from their own home. These three is also showed us a more demand.
Right. Now on the other side of it, there is a low supply. Number one thing I'm going to talk about, since 1989, I know I skipped ahead, but since 1989, which is 33 years, we have had underproduction. So the last construction the levels of construction was only taking place 5 times in those 33 years. Our supply is just low. To fulfill demand, we need to build 333,000 more homes across America, or at least apartment buildings across America, which is again crazy.
Exactly.
Significant portion of the housing was built before 1980, and they need to be updated, kept up, and so you need a lot of capital in order to be functioning. So therefore, there's a lot of work that needs to go into these older homes too. So we have this lack of shortages. What else? We have a lack of labor.
My wife jumped to the third one, which was operating expenses. That, as my wife said, nationwide, many of these buildings are very old, and you need the capital investment to back them to the code.
Yeah, to get them up to code and to be modern for living.
And then the fourth one basically was global supply chain issue that we have right now.
Which is labor shortages are not just here in America, severe lack of housing, price inflations, and supply chain delays. So, I mean, that goes back to the world trade that he's talking about. So these supply chains are not a real thing. We ship in our doors, and if we don't have a door, you can't have a house, even if you're buying brand new, because there's no door. So, I mean, these are just one little factor that I can put in. The wood was another that everybody talked about, but I mean, that's kind of over at this point. But there are way more garage door openers. I have somebody buying a house with no garage door because there was no garage doors. So it's just things that are happening.
And then skilled workers, that many of the boomers, now that they had a lot of skills in construction, now they getting retired, and now we need more skilled workers, that we have a shortage of the labor too.
Okay, let's talk about those net operating expenses, right?
Yes. Therefore, one of the things that actually the landlord basically are increasing the rent, what it is, their expenses, which these operating expenses basically is insurance, basically property taxes.
And maintenance. And maintenance for an older building is going to be a lot more. So the older your building, the more maintenance there is to fix the building. And if everybody's apartment is falling down, that means there's a lot of maintenance happening.
Therefore, to keeping up with this, all these operating expenses, the landlord need to basically, and overdue basically capital improvement, they need to raise their rent.
So besides inflation, you also have actually landlords do have needs in order to rent those rents, which is going to then make this even harder for you. This is why you need to get out of the rent game and into the house game of owning your own house, because then it's all up to you, and you can kind of keep everything up to date, and then you're there. So what should we do? There is no one answer, basically, though.
There's no one answer. Basically, we need to go to the right direction. And what is the right direction? Reducing regulation constraint and also encouraging the housing developments.
Right,
which
there has to be money there, because I mean, if we're not building homes, that's because there's nobody there buying it or whatever. There's buying issues with new as well. So we have to encourage some reforms, but we also have to make sure that people are just buying single-family home, and we are using the land for single-family homes so you can actually have your own place. Next one. Okay,
there is no exact stabilizing rent, to be honest.
No, move on.
I'm sorry. Can you
again, there's no exact date for the global supply. There's no easy answer for policy, and we're not politicians, so we are not going to get into that. But other than we really advocate people should be getting into single-family homes, because that is what's going to build your generational wealth for you and your future.
Yeah, and then reforming something like
No. Moving on.
Okay, moving on. Okay. Tell me what we need to do.
We're going into the higher mortgages where you can't afford it, because that is where the next step comes in, why people say we can't afford it right now.
Exactly.
So we do need inventory. And then you have to be able to, I know this is an answer people don't like, but here in Greenville, we are in a place that is much more affordable, and people are moving here because we're a more affordable place than living where I'm originally from in Boston, which is super expensive. My condo that I grew up in, my parents did not spend that much kind of crazy money on, is now worth $10 million, which is crazy because it was like $100,000 when we were growing up there. So
like
crazy numbers, right?
Yeah.
So just living in an affordable place means that why is hoping for price drop not a good idea?
Okay, you tell me why you think is not a good idea.
Because then we have many people who say, oh, we're just waiting for the market conditions to get better. But the thing is, the market conditions are unlike anything else we've seen in history, to where we have still demand. Interest rates are now higher. We're not going to lie to you. Demand has softened as a result of those interest rates being higher because people can't afford the homes. But by not affording the homes, that just means that we've kept poor people or people who are middle class in place, and those people who have higher incomes can still do these moves, which is now meaning that people who are on the lower end of the spectrum trying to buy their first home has just been knocked out, and that is where this true tragedy arises, because now these people cannot buy a home, and not being able to buy a home is actually hurting you, your children, and your future. So they have again promised to increase those interest rates again and again. So we don't know what's going to happen.
And then increase rate, if you look at the June 2022, the average interest rate was 5.81. And if you compare it to basically in January, February, that is still, we didn't have increase of the rent interest rate for 3.2%. You're basically looking at $600 interest plus your principal.
Right, but don't forget, once you're in a home and it is yours, and rates change in the future, you can always refi down in the future. But buying something that you can afford to pay and then staying in that is your best investment for the future. Even if you rent it out a month later, or 6 months later, or a year later, or 2 years later, depending on that mortgage that you sign, and then move on to your next house, that's totally fine as well, as long as it's making you money. And that's always a good thing too. But if you don't have a place of your own, you're kind of hurting yourself in the long run.
Therefore, the question is, should you buy or wait?
Right.
Therefore, this is the main question that everybody is asking us. But guys, in any kind of given market, like we are now or before the COVID, is really a highly personal decision.
Yeah, it's what's good for you.
Because as you know, purchasing home is the largest single purchase of your lifetime for many of you.
It's the American dream.
And really, it's crucial that you be honest with yourself about your finances, which the reason that is important, and also is a motivation. You can start going to even the monthly calculator mortgage that you can find it in the realtor.com, Zillow, you can find it in NerdWallet. There are many websites.
Also, if you beyond the website, if you really want to take a more proactive thing, I really do recommend calling us, because I'm going to be honest with you, the first time we bought a home, I was terrified of my student loans, as I've told you in this channel before. I was terrified. Sitting down with a mortgage broker who has sat there with us and ran the numbers and what I needed to do in order to get my financial house in order was a life-changing event for me, because I didn't know what to do, and I just assumed I can never do it. But by sitting down with somebody, and we can put you in touch with somebody if you need to, because we're not mortgage brokers, but we can tell you who is good to help you if you wanted to, and then we are preparing you to actually be homeowners. And the right time is always the right time for you.
Therefore, when people are always calling us and they says, I'm trying to predict the market for the next year, and waiting for the next year to see what's going to happen. Market is going to crash. I'm going to get the half a price.
Fear.
But this is fear-based, and also is not really the best strategy, because nobody, as my wife said, has a crystal ball. Instead, it's better to sit, as my wife said, with the professionals.
Or talk to them on the phone. I mean, that's
or talk to us and see what is your need is and what is your budget. You don't know your budget till you talk to lending professionals. Yes. But you know your need. That is what you know. Therefore, if you find a place that you love and the location that you love, then what it is?
Then it's time to start figuring out how to make that happen and make your dream come true and get you in that house.
Then it's come to the feeding your budget, basically.
It's getting over your fear and getting over your fear.
Yes. But another thing that we need to say, that if you are making too many sacrifices to make this happen, you might end up with the buyer's remorse that you don't want it. You don't want it happen to you.
Yeah, you don't want to buy $1 million house if you can't afford the $1 million house. So stick to a budget as well. Always recommend that. So I hope this video was useful.
I hope this video was useful. Please call us.
Yes, we're here.
We know the market here, and we can help you. This is our number. And see you next video. And thank you for watching our YouTube channel. Have a wonderful bye.